Now that right there is a case of excellent timing, isn't it? Elon Musk has just yesterday released this right here, Disney's General Entertainment Content Inclusion Standards, which he describes as, an anonymous source just sent me this from Disney, it is a mandatory institutionalized racism and sexism form, which of course it is. Now this hardly comes as that big of a shocker because we already knew that forms like these existed at Disney. We've even had forms like these released from other companies like Amazon, demanding that a certain percentage of their staff, writers, actors, yada 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 yada, come from so-called underrepresented groups. What is an underrepresented group, you might ask? Oh, you know damn well what an underrepresented group is. As does Disney, as the only thing they allude to is context is critical when evaluating if a group is underrepresented. Context. Because you are, of course, not legally allowed to ask people about their race, religion, sexuality, etc. Because the system was actually set up to try to be as colorblind and as open and fair to everyone as possible. Something the left is currently trying very, very hard to undermine, obviously. And thus, context is critical. If you are sitting opposite a black person, the little Disney bells in your brain should be ringing to go, aha, black, hiya. I do absolutely adore how progressivism has made society significantly and observably more racist. Even if it is positive discrimination. This, of course, comes now also after Gina Carano announced, also I think yesterday, I had a day off because my throat's hurting, it's still all one actually, that she is suing to be forcibly recast in The Mandalorian. Why on God's good earth she would want to be recast in that mess, I don't know, but fair enough. She's also suing for damages, which amounted to, I think it was, there we go, $75,000, which is probably on the cheap side, if anything. And the reaction to this has been by far the most fascinating thing. So, on Forbes here, Paul Tassi. I usually actually consider him to be a fairly level-headed guy in most cases, but you can very clearly tell that he's still a progressive at heart. He argues here for why Gina Carano should, of course, have been fired. Gina Carano is suing Disney after she was fired from her role as Cara Dune in The Mandalorian 2021 over cited posts. One of the side posts in question said the following: most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Naxi, I presume this is because of your censorious writing standards, soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Now, Paul doesn't actually go to argue against that in any way, he simply levels further accusations, like that she was anti-mask. I think we've all pretty much agreed that masks were essentially useless at this point, and nothing more than a sign of your obedience, really. Anti-Trump, blah blah blah, and she has also been accused of transphobic comments. Well, what more is there to add, Paul? Accusations have been leveled. Heresy! You've been accused! Now what do? Will you sink or float, witch? God help me. But of course, well, the thing is, what Gina Carano said is absolutely 100% observably true. This is a historical fact. This isn't a question of debate or like a what if. We know this happened. In fact, it is a little known fact that the Germans, a bit of a broad net there, the Nazis, actually did try to launch discriminatory actions against the Jews before they actually got into power in 1933. There were early efforts to try and turn the German populace against the Jews, because the National Socialists themselves, of course, had long since identified the Jews as part of the capitalist problem. Yes, remember, National Socialists here. The main issue with the Jews was not necessarily their religion, so much as their financial capital for the German National Socialist Workers' Party. But these early attempts actually met with general rejection. They attempted to put German bully boys, the S.A. Brown shirt, out of the stores so they could lean into patrons and go like, you know, this is a Jewish store, right? And the Germans would just go like, yeah, and walk past them, because they hadn't laid the groundwork yet. Weirdly enough, to cause an entire population to hate a certain group of people requires a fair bit of preparation and planning. But again, the modern-day progressivist worldview is that this just happened magically, overnight, for some reason. No, as is so often memed, it wasn't just and then someday they voted for Hitler. It's not how things work. I also love the final argument here because, of course, the suit is over legitimate complaints. She is accusing Disney of having been wrongfully terminated. And I love this too. It's like, oh, she was so mean. She refused to talk to 45 LGBTQ employees plus Kathleen Kennedy. And then she was fired. You know, we've got a term for this, you know, where you're called in to the boss and 45 other ideologically opposed people. We call it a struggle session. Ironically, this is something that the more international variant of socialism, communism, used quite frequently to berate and browbeat political opponents, or those who had strayed too far from the ideologies of the party and required a little bit of correction, shall we say. This is not unknown in any way. And I also love, of course, that his main argument for why all of this is meritless, why the lawsuit is silly, is that Disney's a private company. And can do whatever it wants. No, Paul. I know you're more intelligent than this, so I can only assume that the progressive brain rot has really set in here. We have laws against this. It is actually illegal to fire someone for shitty reasons. You actually do have to go through a process to fire people. You can't simply just go and terminate them for no goddamn good reason whatsoever. There is legal protections here, but details. And of course, this will further back that up because they can now prove, Gina Carano's legal team can prove, that there are clearly racist and sexist hiring practices and laws and organizations within Disney. Thus, seeing as this is an exclusively one side of the political divide position, you can very easily back up the argument that Carano was fired first and foremost for her political position rather than anything else. And this also comes amidst the fact that Mickey's, of course, having a little bit of boardroom woes as well, as activist investors are trying to take over Disney. Activist investors. Described by Variety. Yes, it's exactly what you think it is. Disney has, for the longest time, been a very, very left-wing company and has submitted to left-wing pressure again and again at the severe cost of the actual company's profits, which is currently down in the gutters, with their attempt to create a streaming service having been consecutively failing now for year after year, as the investors are beginning to run out of, patience, weirdly enough. And in the midst of this, activist investors, and you know when the mainstream media calls them activists, they're not on the left side of things, are trying to move in and go, okay, politics is literally ruining my piggy bank. Could we not, please? And that's what's happening. Right-wing groups are moving in to try and take control over Disney via the boardroom. And by right-wing, I mean people who'd like to earn money. How I miss the days of cold-blooded vampiric capitalism. Everything was so much better then. We had such a nice and clear relationship. Disney wanted my money and understood that in order to get my money, they had to give me something I wanted. It was a truly beautiful relationship. It brings a tear to my eye whenever I remember the cold, blood-sucking vampires in the boardroom. Yeah. Disney's not in a very good position right now, and this will almost certainly make it worse yet again, as a bunch of legal trouble on top of, once more, provable allegations against Disney. And I guarantee you this as well. Disney is already being sued by other employees for being fired for sexist reasons. Left-wing employees, mind you, as well. If Gina Carano wins this, and I think she's got a pretty damn good chance of doing so, particularly with Elon Musk's financial backing, then it is going to be an avalanche of lawsuits against Disney, all citing this as precedence. When you then add on the fact as well that the activist investors can provably point to the reason for all of this as a political ideology that has nothing to do with keeping Disney profitable, I am pretty damn sure, now more so than ever, that Disney, as a progressive company, will be gone within 3 to 4 years, tops, if it won't even simply just be dead. The question is if Disney can even survive the financial backlash, as they're not doing very well and their only real revenue source is parks and cruises. And with, again, Ted Cruz's exit from presidential runnings, he's going to want to go back to his golden goose and beat it senseless, as every time he shits on Disney, he gets more popular. I think Ted might be eyeing another run for the big White House or a senatorial position off the back of Mickey's beaten and bruised carcass. Now that really is a lovely sight. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.